Hey everyone, as you guys all know, I typically do video tutorials on how to do things, and what we're going to be doing is installing the Equus big brake kit onto a 2010 Genesis Coupe. There may be some sort of variances between the 2011s and potentially the 2012s whenever the hell those come out. So I can't guarantee it on those models, but on a 2010, as far as I know, there is no difference, but guaranteed to work on a 2010. If you don't know how to take your wheel off, you need to stop right now and find somebody to do this kit for you, because you need to know how to do your basic mechanical stuff. First thing you're going to do is remove your caliper. Then you're going to remove your disc brake by releasing these two screws down here and here. Your rotor might be stuck to your hub, because as you can see there's a little bit of rusting going on in there. That's from 2.5 years. To remove your caliper, you need to undo this bolt here, and you need to come around and undo this bolt here. That'll pull your caliper off, and you do that before you pull your rotor off. Next, because on the big brake kit for the Equus, you cannot reuse your stock line here without making a small modification right there, which I'm not going to do. I'm just going to replace it with a stainless steel line. Yeah, you can get a good view there. So what you need to do is you also need to remove this bolt right here. You also need a special little wrench, which you can pick up at any auto store, to grip onto this brake line correctly here to prevent any issues. Tearing this or stripping this, because if you strip this you're screwed. And then you pinch down here after removing the pressure clip right here. You just pull that out with a pair of pliers or the flat blade screwdriver and put it in between and pop it out. So what we're going to do is we're going to start by removing the caliper, and then we'll take a good close look at that, since we might as well cover that while we're doing this. Once you got these bolts loosened, they'll still require a wrench, but you should be able to undo them. Before you take the caliper off, you might need it for leverage, but to undo those, you're going to need a number 3 Phillips or Starhead, I call them a Starhead, screwdriver, and just crack them loose. To get those bolts in the back undone, you need a 17mm socket, but if they're a little tight, get a 17mm wrench, slide it on, then take another wrench of equivalent size, slide it over like that, and use this to pull, and it should crack off fairly easy. You can also try tightening it a bit and then pulling it back, and it should help crack that loose. It all depends on how long it's been sitting. I went ahead and undid this because I wanted a little bit more clearance, but you have to be careful when you undo these bolts if you don't have this connected, because that means your caliper can drop to the ground, which you don't want to do. And as soon as I get this undone, we'll take another peek. Once you got the caliper down, you're going to notice that the brake pads are sitting in there still. They stay attached. And if you haven't already, you're going to need to undo this. This is a good time, since you already cracked those bolts off, or those screws, to go back with your screwdriver and fully release them. If you have a fairly new Genesis Coupe, they shouldn't be all that difficult to undo. Well, any of these. If you have a fairly older Genesis Coupe like I do, they're going to be a little bit more tricky. Especially if you've never had a brake service done before. This would be a perfect time to lightly take a sander wheel and clean up the threads on the bolt, just to make sure that they don't continue to rust over and fill with gunk. You could also put some rust inhibitor on them, but look into that beforehand, because I don't know if that has any ill effects on your braking system. Now, as you can see, I've undone that, but the caliper, or the rotor, is still fairly on there fairly tight. A typical trick is to just rotate it around, give it some taps to crack the rust, and then it should come off fairly easy. Unfortunately, mine's on there a little bit tighter. So to protect the rotor, either tape up a hammer, use a rubber mallet is preferred, or put something between the rotor and your striking surface that's fairly large. That way it distributes the force evenly and doesn't damage your rotor in case you ever want to put them back on. The dust shield is not folded over on the Genesis Coupe's front brakes. And just goes nicely around. And the Equus rotors, the Equus dust covers do not fit the Genesis Coupe, so don't even bother ordering them. But Nick, NCZ13, won't even sell you them because they don't fit anyways. Just in case you pick up this kit from somewhere else. So we're going to take a quick peek at the caliper since we got it out. It is very sturdy construction from what I can tell. The pads are kept in there nice and tight with some shims and some pressure clips. I'm not quite sure what it's made out of. It's either aluminum or some sort of cast iron. I'd actually have to heat it up to find out. But they're all going to be pretty dirty when you take them apart. And they have a single large piston with a floating actuator body here. And that's what causes your big clamping force. And here's the issue why you can't use, cutting this little clip off, you can't use this brake line. And I don't know if this drains in or not. I guess I could take one of them off and find out. Before you pull off your brake lines, however, you need to make sure if you have undercoating, or even if you don't have undercoating, that all of this area in here is completely taped off and plasticed, because brake fluid will eat this undercoating right off. It just pours off like water once brake fluid hits it. So we'll cover that once we get to there. In the meantime, we're going to try and knock this rotor off. Now, the rotors might be stuck on there ass fucking tight. I mean like a virgin nun in her 90s. So, going along, you want to hit it in these spots between the studs. Careful not to hit the studs if you have a 3mm spacer, because you won't be replacing them. If you are replacing the studs, you still don't want to hit them, or if you do, make sure it's a glancing blow, because you don't want these to bend, otherwise you'll never get them out. So now that we got this loosened, we can remove it and take a look at the quality of the disc that Hyundai sells its customers. As you can see, they're vented straight through. That's a nice feature, because a lot of aftermarket rotors don't even do that, believe it or not. They did put an anti-rust coating, but that seems to have worn away. The surface contact area was very flush, very tight, and as you can see, both surfaces have pretty much no rust on them. What you want to do is lightly take some fine grit sandpaper and sand around the hub surface here. You can even sand in here and in around here. And then you can, once you put the Equus rotor on, spray in here to keep the rust off, or you could put a rust inhibitor coating on here, and you won't have to deal with that ever again, hopefully. This is a good time to take a look at the dust shields, because a lot of people have been bitching about them. The dust shields can be removed by taking off these 4 bolts here. And on the other side, if you are wanting maximum cooling efficiency, the Equus rotors actually have quite a significantly larger hole right here. But they won't go on because the hub pattern here is different. They won't connect at all. So if you want to, you can take your Dremel or other grinder tool, remove the dust shield off completely, and open that hole up, and you can probably open it up quite a bit. As you can see, it's vented in both sides, so air rushing through can get into it, into the back. But you could open it up quite a bit to allow more airflow, but you're going to do that at the expense of more debris behind the rotor. The section over here is completely exposed, so it actually does get quite a bit of air coming back through here and hitting the back of the caliper. And the caliper connections are in a nice spot as well. I'm not going to worry about this. Another thing you could do if you wanted to is you could pull it off and paint it if you wanted to make it a special color or whatever, or even just clean it up. The Equus ones are actually really nice. I really wish they could have fitted because they're a very nice shiny aluminum, straight aluminum color that won't rust at all. And I was quite upset that those didn't fit. So now that that's off, and that's off, if you're going to be changing out these studs here, there's a special tool that I don't have on me at the moment, so I'll have to get to gently push them out. Or you have to remove the entire hub assembly by undoing these 4 bolts in the back and unplugging your wheel speed sensor. You want to be very careful with this because they're ass expensive. And once you unplug that and undo those 4 bolts, the whole front hub assembly should just pop right off, and you'll see it right here. You can put some WD-40 on there to make it a little bit easier as it starts going through. See if I missed anything. No. You can either have these pressed on or pressed off if you need to upgrade these. I'm putting on 5mm spacers, which I consider to be the bare minimum for the Equus calipers. But they say you can put 3, but I got 5s from Tom and Mike at G&M/Havoc. I'll get all this cleaned up. I'm going to do all the taping up there so we can take that off, and we'll continue. Now, going back to what I said earlier in this video, it's very important that you tape up around there. Make sure no brake fluid can touch your car at any point, because brake fluid's very, very corrosive. You also might want to put something down on the ground. This is my driveway that I never use, so I don't really give a shit, and I'll just power wash it before I put my tires back on. Also throw some Zorball down. Environmentally friendly, people. Hyundai was nice enough to sponsor some bags to push the shit out of the way. Those are the bags that come with my front fender fog light bezels that are no longer on the car right now. So make sure it's all taped up. The special special wrench you're going to need is an 11mm, and it's going to look like this, except it's going to have a little piece that comes like this, and it only has enough room to slide. Trying to get a good view here. It's only going to have enough room to slide like that on top of it, and then it's going to slide down like that, and it's going to grip it on pretty much everything except one side. So use one of those, and you're going to need something to hold, a pair of pliers or something like that to hold this in spot, just so you don't start twisting this. If you notice that this is starting to move, stop. Don't do it anymore, because if you break this, you're hooped.